So today marks the first in a series of videos where we're going to be discussing creating more variation and cultivating more style when it comes to your footwork. When it comes to hip hop, footwork is a crucial element of the dance, and sometimes it's easy to get caught up in repetition and really in just feeling lost and not having any clear direction on how to progress. So today we're going to seek to combat that and give you guys some tangible tools that you can utilize to create your own variation and cultivate your own style when it comes to your footwork. Let's just go ahead and hop into it. Like I said, this is the first in a series of videos that we're going to be doing on this topic. Today, the main idea that we're going to be focusing on is this concept of utilizing hip-hop vocabulary to create more variation within your footwork. Sometimes when it comes to footwork within hip-hop, people tend to approach it with this anything goes type of mentality, but I think that there's a more nuanced approach that we can take that will help our dance to look more authentic to the style of hip-hop. And one of the other main ideas we're going to be exploring today is this concept of taking something that already exists and turning it into something new. That's a basic premise for most forms of artistic expression within hip-hop culture. Whether you're talking about sampling or creating a new dance move, this concept of utilizing material or items or moves or ideas that already exist, taking them, internalizing them, and turning them into something new is very prevalent within the culture. And so we're going to utilize some of that methodology today to create some more variation for our footwork while we're dancing. So here we go, let's get into it. So today specifically, we're going to be working with 3 steps and really trying to break apart and analyze them in order to help create more options for ourselves that we can utilize when we're playing around with our footwork while we're dancing. Now, you can do this with any step and at any time. We have a couple videos on the channel about taking a codified hip hop step and manipulating the basic mechanic of it to create more variation. And this is sort of the same idea. We're going to take 3 steps, break them apart, kind of analyze all the different components of them, and then take each of those components and utilize them to create some more variation and some more ideas for us within our footwork. I would encourage you as you experiment or try this concept to utilize either the 3 steps that I'm utilizing or to utilize 3 steps that you are most comfortable with. The main idea here is to take something that you are already familiar with, something that you're already doing or that you're already good at, and to then flip it or look at it in a slightly different way. Kind of break it apart and really try to separate all the different elements of the step so that you can then take those different pieces and put them back together in a new way. So let's say we were to do this with a step like the kickball change. Within a kickball change, there's really 3 basic movements. We have our kick, we have our step, and we have our weight shift. Now you can do that in any which direction with any specific angle of the legs, but that is the basic mechanic of the step. You have kick 1, step 2, weight change 3. Now there's a couple of different ways that we could play around with this idea. We could either 1, take each of the components and utilize them separate from each other, or we could even think about changing the order in which we do those components to create more variation. An example of that would be instead of going kick, step, out every time, we could reverse it, out, step, kick, or step, kick, out, and create variation that way, simply utilizing all of the different components of the step and just rearranging them. Or we could take 1 or 2 of the components and combine them with some other component. We could take the kick and the shift and then transition into a different idea. Truthfully, I think we could have 3 separate videos breaking down each of these steps individually and just playing around with all the variations that we have available to us. Even thinking about ideas like changing the facing of your body or sort of morphing and blending the step with other steps, even just taking a simple idea like that and really breaking it apart can give us a lot of options to play around with. Now, not all steps are going to be as easy to find variation within. For example, if we're just doing our Toprock step, there's not as many elements specifically to play around with here. We have our step and our cross. With some steps, it may be a little bit less about trying to find a different sequence of the step and more so about how we can utilize the specific movements or elements of the step and incorporate them into the footwork that we're already doing. So let's say, for example, we're doing a shamrock. For an idea like this, we could think about taking the shamrock and blending it with another idea. Shamrock, top rock. Or let's take a new step, like say the Roger Rabbit. If you've seen my breakdown of this step, you'll know that we sort of played around with this variation of adding a cross as we're doing this step right here. But we can add concepts like the cross within a top rock, add them to steps like the Roger Rabbit to add just a little bit more variation and a little bit more style. And the cool thing about approaching it like this by utilizing codified hip hop vocabulary is that we're utilizing material that is foundational to the dance style itself. A lot of hip hop vocabulary is very pedestrian and very accessible. It's not necessarily like ballet where we're doing these insane bot mas or kicking our leg above our head, you know? Even if the rhythms or the timing can be tricky, most of the stuff that we do within hip hop is a little bit more natural for the human body. We could simply do a step together or a two-step, which is literally just 2 steps. When you really start to break apart these steps and really analyze what we're actually doing, you start to see that really it's just a lot of stepping and turning and crossing and kicking that's all getting blended up and mushed together anyways. So why not take all of those elements and blend them up and mush them up in your own way to create your own style or your own approach, or to give yourself more options to play around with when you're dancing. That's kind of a simple way to put it, but really it is pretty much as simple as that. Now obviously you can be more effective or less effective when you do this, taking in consideration factors like timing or building a cohesive transition between steps. Like simply just putting together 2 steps doesn't make them look good together. Next week we're actually going to have a video coming out about that topic, utilizing all of these different elements that we're finding as we break apart these steps in a more effective way by trying to build cohesion and continuity in between the elements that we're working with. I had a friend say this recently and I thought it was pretty profound, and I don't know why, maybe I've just never heard someone say it like this before, but there's a difference between the concept of improv and the concept of freestyle. Within hip hop, we don't typically improv. We freestyle. Improv has a little bit less restriction on it. It's a little bit more experiential, and it's more so about what your body has the capacity to produce in that moment. And it's not necessarily based off of one specific dance technique. It could be a combination of a bunch of different dance techniques. It could be simply your own personal exploration, something that is completely unique to you. But when it comes to freestyle, we're not necessarily utilizing movement that is exclusive to us. We're utilizing concepts and ideas that already exist, aka hip-hop vocabulary or foundational concepts, to cultivate a new iteration or a new expression of those elements within our own body. And the way that you put all of those elements together is your own personal style. And so if we can approach this exercise more like that, kind of like what we said at the beginning, taking these elements that already exist, these foundational concepts, these vocabulary steps, breaking them apart and utilizing them in a new and unique way, but still finding our base in the foundational concepts and ideas that have been created for us, I think it'll really help as we're trying to explore what it's like to cultivate more variation within our dance, specifically today talking about our footwork. Now when it comes to an element like skate, this is a super fun one because not only is this a codified hip hop step, this motion, some people use this motion and call it the skate, but it's also an element of the dance. If you've seen my 5 elements of hip hop dance video, we broke down how when we play with the element of skate, what we're doing is we're envisioning that under our feet there are roller skates, and instead of moving our feet through space by always lifting and stepping, we can utilize the concept of skate to change the way in which we travel or move our feet on the floor. And you can play around with this concept by utilizing a codified step. You could break apart a codified step that utilizes the element of skate. You can think about what it's like to explore this concept of skate with other body parts, or you could combine this concept with other dance steps. Just experimenting with your own variations of different steps and just changing up the sequence or the order in which you perform those steps to add some more variation and to cultivate some more style. And so as we continue over the next couple of videos to dive into this concept of our footwork, I think this is a great place to start because 1, we have to analyze what we already know, what we're already comfortable and familiar with, and 2, how we can utilize what we already know and what we already have to create more variation by looking at it or utilizing it in a different way than we normally do. Now, as you're exploring this concept yourself, obviously it's going to work a lot better if you can pick steps or concepts that have a little bit more to do with your feet, like the prep may not be the step that you want to experiment with if you're trying to cultivate more variation within your footwork. But something like a Roger Rabbit or a skate or an ATL or a kickball change, all of those have great pieces and great elements that you can pull from to create your own variation and your own style for your footwork. Now, like I said, I utilized those 3 steps for my examples today: the kickball change, Toprock, and skate, but you can feel free to do this with any step, and I encourage you to do this with any step. And this concept also extends beyond simply exploration with our footwork. In my video where we talked about arm variations for dance, we sort of touched on similar ideas as this. Taking and pulling from different elements within hip-hop culture and hip-hop dance to cultivate more style and more variation with your arms. And so I think just as you move forward with your own exploration of movement, whether you're talking about choreography or freestyle, specifically when it comes to hip-hop, looking at all of the information and all of the tools that you already have and that you already know as a library or as a source to pull inspiration from or to pull new ideas from, as opposed to always thinking, I have to learn a new step or a new move to add variation to my dancing. In other words, instead of thinking I have to add new information to cultivate more variation within my footwork, think about how you can utilize the information that you already have and that you already have access to or that you're already comfortable with to create that variation and to explore some new ideas. And that is pretty much going to do it for our breakdown of this concept today. Like I said, this is part one in a series of videos that we're going to be doing on this topic, really trying to dive into our footwork over the next couple of weeks and just break down some really practical and tangible tools that you guys can utilize to improve and to cultivate some more variation. I'm gonna go ahead and give this concept a shot for you guys, just kind of show you how I like to explore with breaking apart different steps and finding variation within my footwork. Thank you guys so much for your time and watching this video. I'm gonna see you in the next one. Peace out.